And we're live. Let me throw the intro up there. And we are live with Zared from Democracy and Hoppian.org. Zared, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Caleb.
Thanks for coming on. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna talk about democracy, the God that failed. Talk about why the left sucks, paleo stuff. It's gonna be great.
Awesome. Sounds great.
So Hoppian.org. I gotta say, I love the artwork and the style, the synthwave, like Hoppian stuff.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it. It is.
Yeah,
so
back in the day, it was like back I think when Hoppe had first started gaining more popularity with the right, and before there were all the purges on social media, it was just starting to come into favor. So we thought, well, I really like the style too, so let's capitalize on it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm gonna say a link real quick for the that we're live on Twitter, and then we can. I got a few questions about paleo stuff and talking to the right. Let's see here. We are. There we go. Okay. Where's that coming from? I got sound coming from one of the. There it is. I have so many tabs open right now. I had like sound coming from one of them, and I couldn't figure out which one it was. It was we covered it because he's going live with Pete right now, and I'm kind of. It's like, oh, we got to go live with Pete right when I'm going live. He's gonna watch this one with Pete's over there. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm just gonna retweet you real quick so we can maybe bring some people in.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah. So paleo stuff. Like I've recently hopped on this whole paleo train and kind of going more right wing. I mean, I never really was left. The most left I was open borders for like a month. I said it was a libertarian position. I didn't know you could be a closed borders libertarian until like I saw Lou Walker and Dave Smith. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I don't have to be stupid now. I can do that. So
yeah. I don't have to adhere to the I guess the ether of libertarian opinion for quite a long time that you have to be an open borders guy to be a libertarian.
Yeah. It's I have friends who are open border types, and I don't even talk about it with them. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important topic, but right now, like there's two views, and I'm sympathetic to the view that, hey, this isn't important right now because it's not a big a threat as these lockdowns and mandates and things like that. I agree that the lockdowns and mandates are probably, if not the most important thing to talk about right now. I think, however, that there is still a problem in the larger sphere of politics in the world, where the border crises around the world are definitely, if not the top item besides that. And the reason that I say that is because I think a lot of libertarians mistakenly believe that, hey, I've got to believe in the government straight up saying, hey, open the borders and let anybody come in and everybody go out, whoever they want, while the government's stealing from us to provide for the people that are coming in and that ultimately are violating our property rights. And the government, it's like the question that I posed on Twitter a while back was, if someone steals your bike, should everyone get a ride? And the answer is obviously no. The answer is clearly no. So when the government takes over property, and it has legitimately all across the country, I mean, if you look at the interstate highway system, that was entirely built through eminent domain and the theft of property. The sidewalks and things like that, those are clearly misappropriated from either business owners or people who previously owned that area. The roads entirely, I hate roads. Like, it's a joke that libertarians hate roads, but I legitimately do, because they are the means in which the government can force us to associate and prevent us from disassociating. And the right of free association and of disassociation is really important. So when you have when you have that happen, it's pretty clear to me that we can oppose that like at every step of the way. And I think too that Hoppa's net taxpayer argument is a good argument. I mean, in the interim, if you can't identify or you can't achieve the goal that you want to achieve right now, which is clearly private borders where there are private roads and private sidewalks and you pay to use them and people are free to discriminate and do what have you with them. I think in the absence of that, it's perfectly legitimate, and it's a very good argument to say, hey, the people that are paying the most taxes to keep these things up, especially when you're talking about roads and things, those are local communities that are paying for that, right? Through state taxes or tobacco taxes or what have you, depending on the state and the area. But I think it's totally reasonable to say that those people should get a bigger say than someone from thousands of miles away. It just seems like common sense.
Yeah, it is not immediate follow that because the government made a park, you can shoot heroin up in the park. There's no.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So you talk a lot about going at the right from the right.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a big fan of that. I talk to a lot. I don't talk to people on the left. I talk to people on the right because have value. Like Tom Wood said, the left libertarians have no value as people. I think all the left has no value as people.
Yeah.
So when it comes, but sadly, not everyone who identifies as right wing is right wing.
Oh no, definitely not.
What's in your opinion? How do you determine what kind of right wing people are actually right wing? Because the Russell Kirk, Buckleyite types are not right wing to me.
No,
they're what's kind of conservatives.
No, the Buckleyites are they're dupes because Buckley was a CIA agent. But I mean, if you're going to talk about what it is to be right wing, you have to understand what it is to be right wing, and it's not a vague amalgamation of political positions. It's a very distinct thing. It is whether or not you believe in hierarchical order. Do you believe in hierarchical order, or do you believe in equality? If you believe in equality, you are a leftist. It doesn't matter what political label you put on yourself. If you believe in equality, you are left wing. If you believe in hierarchical order, then you are right wing. If you try and amalgamate those two or mix them together, you're dumb. You can't. I mean, fundamentally, ultimately, if you mix true natural order, hierarchical order with egalitarianism, you get egalitarianism. It's not some mix of them. One is parasitic and one is not parasitic. So if you're talking to a right winger or a supposed right winger and you say, do you believe in equality? You can come at them very easily, especially if you're a libertarian from the right and say, no, you're not a right winger. You're a milquetoast leftist. Right. So I believe in, then they say, well, not equality of outcome, equality of opportunity. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. We're all born differently into different circumstances, and trying to level those will ultimately create the same thing. So don't let them get away with that, number one. And then number two, they're like, well, I believe in, certain types of equality, and the equality here and not equality there, and equality here and not equality there. Well, at the end of the day, you're just justifying subverting one order that you may not like. And that's not hierarchical order. You're picking and choosing. You're acting like a leftist in those positions. And ultimately, when you do that and you come at them from that perspective, they either wake up and they want to read more, or they end up going further left, which is great for us. Stay away from our right-wing positions. In my opinion, libertarianism is the most right-wing philosophy because it totally embraces the natural order. It totally embraces hierarchy. It says, hey, if you look at economics, what is the most hierarchical thing you can think of in economics? Well, how about the division of labor and free exchange of goods? The fact that that there is inequality in everything, and inequality creates trade. How about the fact that if we're going to exchange ownership and property, you're saying you have order, you have hierarchy over the property that you've created, and ultimately you have hierarchy over your own life, right? So there is no further right-wing position than to be a libertarian. And when leftists come at you and say, well, you're just a right-winger who likes to smoke weed, first off, I don't like to smoke weed, but yes, I am a right winger. You're 100% right.
Yeah. What do you think is more value? Talking to the conservatives who are open to these ideas and the actual right wing, or talking to libertarians about this kind of thing?
So I think that there's value in both. I think that if a libertarian hasn't been totally duped by, and I guess this criticism can apply to both. If a libertarian hasn't been totally duped by the blogosphere, Facebook libertarians who are, marching in gay pride parades and smoking weed every day, and talking about how we should be able to give kids heroin, then if they haven't been sucked into that, then yeah, they're way open to it. I've had a lot of people that were straight up afraid to come out as right wing that said, told me, thank you for being this person that says this, because now I feel like my positions aren't in contradiction all the time. Like I usually just, be quiet, or I won't talk about these things, or I just kind of let them get away with it because they just call me unprincipled. Well, you're not unprincipled. They're unprincipled because they don't understand what libertarianism is, right? So, but again, you can level that same criticism against the right if they are not duped into being a neocon or these kind of progressive conservatives. If they're your everyday MAGA libertarians who are like, we need to go back to the founding fathers. We need to look at, how our country was founded. We need to get away from all this BS. Screw the politicians, and ultimately screw democracy. We just need to do what's right. Those people are really open to the message, extremely open. I mean, the only pushback that I think I've gotten from the right is mostly from a left-wing position. There's some out there who can take an argument with libertarianism, and they do it pretty well. I always seem to be able to shut them down one way or another, but those people are very few and far between. Most of the people aren't going to be that well read, number one, and number two, if they're not well read, you can come at them from the you're holding leftist positions perspective, right? So,
little self promotion here. I have Thomas DeLorenzo coming on the podcast probably next month, and one thing we're going to do. Yeah, I'm super excited. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read some TradCon tweets that force up Hamilton and Henry Clay, the Party of Lincoln types. There's a guy on Twitter, the classical conservative, he calls himself, and he'll quote Henry Clay and Hamilton like this is the Bible.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I'm gonna convince him to get on Twitter. That's my goal. I want to convince DeLorenzo to get on Twitter.
Oh yeah, he needs to come back, man. I want to see him post some Southerner memes like that. Yes. That would make my life. Did you see him talking about Clyde Wilson and the Yankee problem in America? I think that was during the last Mises U event, and I just busted up laughing. I was like, this is what we need. We just need to be honest about this crap. Like we're not Lincolnites. Like we're not gonna cede that position just because it's easy. I'm a Southerner. I support secession. I support the independent view that we can go out and we can do these types of things. I support the war for Southern independence. I mean, Murray Rothbard supported that. Hoppe supports that. When on earth did libertarians on our side take up the mantle of Lincoln? I've been so pleased recently with how much positive reception that I've gotten in the last year, posting things about the South and the Civil War and things like that. But previously, before that, it was really hard. There were a lot of people, and conservatives are the worst for that. They really are. They are totally duped by the cult of Lincoln, and it's so bad. It's like the dude was a communist, like in and out. He was a freaking communist, and you're doing it because he founded a political party. Like you're not principled. You're just stupid.
Yes, I was arguing with that classical conservative dude, and he said Lincoln was a good president, and Republicans need to return to American school economics and protectionism and nationalism.
Oh God!
And I put the lecture from Thomas DeLorenzo about the curse of economic nationalism, and he said, didn't that guy call Lincoln a Hitler? I said Hitler was an economic nationalist.
Yeah. I mean, like, but look, the way that I look at a lot of this stuff is like, it quote unquote economic nationalism isn't really nationalism. It ultimately leads to a degeneration of the nation you're trying to protect. So how and what way is that nationalism? You're not doing anything that's promoting the nation. You're just promoting a group of few people who know these decisions before they're going to be made and end up profiting off of them. That's it. That you're essentially becoming the exact people that are in power now. Like, so you don't really care about anything. You don't care about freedom. You don't care about the nation. You just care about self-enrichment. Well, then you're a fucking leftist. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse on this, but
it's fine. It is a Catholic libertarian, but I can't help myself either. It's a terrible habit I picked up.
I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. I have a guy. If it gets real bad, I have a guy to edit stuff. Base Topian on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
He edited. I had Scott Holton on talk about Star Wars, and when Scott found out it was the Catholic pod, he's like, "Oh, can you have someone bleep all those curse words?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I can get a guy."
That's awesome.
So, excuse me, I'm just getting over COVID. I still got a cough.
Oh, you mean you're not dead?
I know, right?
I heard that you die from that all the time. Like, yeah. Well, I heard that's a death sentence.
I love that I got COVID because I get to argue with people on Facebook about who did get COVID. You know, they say things like, "I haven't been to." Let's say they post about all about COVID and stuff, and they'll say like, "I got COVID." And it was terrible. Like, I got it too. It wasn't that bad. But, like, well, you were one of the lucky ones. I ended up in the hospital. I'm like, damn, you sound like a bitch. they lose their mind.
Like, I'm pretty sure, like, as to many public things that I've been to, and I flew in planes. I flew to Europe. I was around a bunch of people in Europe. I came back. The only thing that I got during that entire time was food poisoning, and not COVID. And I don't think that if I got it, it was so mild that I didn't even know that I didn't even know that I have it. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not to say some people aren't, having a hard time with it, but from what I understand, it's mostly old people. Like I get it. Like, if you're an old man and you want to wear a mask and, even maybe go get the vaccine, even though I probably wouldn't recommend that, I can kind of understand that more. But if you're in your 20s or 30s or, if it's or younger, then why the hell are we not only why the hell are we putting up with this, but why the hell are you capitulating to that narrative? Yeah. It's crazy.
I COVID stuff. I can't get I get so upset thinking about it, honestly.
Oh yeah.
The left's evil about all of it, and then the right's buying into it. It was just even when you get a guy conservative who's against it, you're just like, you're against it for the wrong reasons, and you're making it look worse.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, like trust me. I love Alex Jones. I think Alex Jones is a national treasure. I've listened to Alex Jones for years. I think he's a great dude. But when you go, like, Alex has a terrible habit of taking really true facts, because he's right almost all the time. Like, he legitimately is, but he has a terrible habit of taking things and sensationalizing them or changing them slightly to the point where it sounds totally crazy, and then people are like immediately dismiss it. And I think that some of the people on the right tend to do that stuff too, and they'll make shit up. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, there's a lot of shit that's happening right now. Don't do that. You're hurting us. You're hurting this message, because there's a lot of like look at Australia. You don't have to make anything up. It's a freaking police state, and they're putting people in camps. Like, it's legitimately happening. Like, it just aggravates me.
Yeah. Well, before I get into the book, one more thing about COVID. You can't get COVID if you never get tested. So that's, that's my advice. Let's get into the book. So, Democracy, The God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe. Incredible book. Jared, why is democracy cringe?
Well, I would say that it is right now it is obviously our current reality. And I think, in my opinion, it is on the downward slope of the decivilizational process. I think that over time, even though that humanity has ultimately benefited from our progress, I think we've benefited from the progress not as a result of democracy, but in spite of it. I think that ultimately, as Hoppe states, that if we had embraced and retained traditional monarchy, that we would be infinitely richer than we are now. And we'd probably be colonizing space for the king. I mean, I think that
Crusades know no bounds.
yeah, right. Like it's a Warhammer scene. I mean, that's basically what we'd be looking at. And I think that even further, that if we had not left the feudal system, but instead incorporated serfs into the division of labor, that ultimately we'd be even richer than that. I mean, we may have very well reached a point of transcending physical form. I mean, like it would have been, it's like we would have been so far along the curve that it's hard to imagine what we would look like right now. But instead, we've embraced this terrible idea that democracy is somehow good, when in fact it's totally destroyed not only our wealth, or our potential wealth. It has limited human progress to the point that we're stagnating, and eventually you're going to see it collapse.
Yes. So why is monarchy based?
So I ultimately I say that after World War I, you saw our descent into democracy, or at least full democracy. I know there were democracies before that. Guys that are listening to this, I understand that there were definitely democracies before that point. However, that is the point in which the traditional monarchical order, or at least, the 50-50 or the 20-80 mark, had been passed, and it had been totally replaced with democracy at that point. I mean, the old monarchies were gone. And yes, I know that there are still monarchies out there, but they're really not. They're just show monarchies that are really just parliamentary democracies. That's all they are. They're not really, like, if the Queen stepped forward and was like, hey, we're not doing any more war and screw Parliament, there wouldn't be a monarchy in the UK anymore. Like, it wouldn't happen, right? Like, it just wouldn't happen. And not that she would do that anyway. She's a corrupt, Democrat in her own mind anyway. She's just the ultimate beneficiary of the democratic order. But anyway, so I think that, that's the point in which more private governance was replaced with more public governance completely. So monarchy itself, if you look at it, like, let me ask you this question here. We can form it like this. If I give you a house and you own it, what condition do you think that house is going to be in 10 years versus if I were to just say, I need you to take care of this house for 4 years? Do you think you would take better care of it for the long term because you're going to live there and it's yours, and maybe you want to sell it and incur the profit or give it to your kids or something like that, versus you just being the temporary caretaker of it?
Yeah.
Clearly, you're going to take better care of it if it's yours. And this goes to common economic principles we talk about all the time, which is the tragedy of the commons, right? And that's really what democracy is. It's putting governments in the hand, or in the commons, right? But
David, I've been told that the tragedy of the commons is not a weird thing by my political science teacher.
Oh my God. I mean, clearly, throughout history, if and in our personal lives too, like when you own something, you have better control over it. You take better care of it. You try and make sure that it sticks around until you've capitalized on it to the maximum point in which you die and pass it on to your kids. Or you're stupid. And there are definitely low time preference or high time preference people out there that don't understand ownership as well. And this is why we have problems with loans and things like that in 2008 and all of that. That's how all that came to be. But if basically, if you're a Democratic caretaker, if you're a politician, right, and you're trying to become president, what is that president more likely to do? Increase his temporary political power, the things that he wants to get accomplished in a short time, and look good and make connections and friends and gain wealth and personal enrichment for himself? Or is he going to make the country in which he's lording over the temporary caretaker of better for the long run and make the hard decisions. Clearly, he's going to do the former, right? Whereas the king, if it's his, right, and this is like if it's a hereditary monarchy, and I'm wanting to keep control of this, and I'm wanting to make sure that I have a legacy and things get passed on to my kids, and then I retain the monarchy, and then I retain the power from my family and my quote unquote private governance, then obviously I'm going to make decisions that are much more high time preference and will benefit the country in the long term. This is why when Hoppe says that monarchy is infinitely better than democracy, this is why, because ultimately the decisions that are made via time preference are better. So as a result, you get better results. Now, not only the time preference and the decisions that are made by Democrats are ultimately terrible, but also you have a single person, so to speak, to wring their neck, right? Like you could have a revolt. Go ahead.
That's what actually got me first thinking about monarchy is I saw a Hoppe speech. I actually wrote Hoppe off during like 1 month. I was like left libertarian, middle ground kind of guy. So I saw a thread on Reddit about Hoppe, on a leftist bad philosophy Reddit. So all these leftists were just freaking out about Hoppe. So I wrote him off like an idiot. And then I saw one lecture of him when he said, in monarchy, king may be bad guy. In democracy, all bad.
Yeah, that's true though. I mean, like
it is.
Yeah,
and in monarchy, if king's bad, families allowed to make him head sorter. Like it's. I heard that like, hey, conflict resolution is better under monarchy because it's one group of people.
Yeah,
he's right.
He's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of like say like even looking now and in the past, right? Like the founding fathers under the king are ultimately much freer than they are today under a democracy. And people will say, well, it's a different time and you can't really compare those things. Well, I think you can, because if you look at democracies during that time, they were ultimately not as free as a lot of the monarchies. And you can directly compare them and see that ultimately that, the king was trying to make good decisions. Not that king in particular. That King George wasn't exactly the best king that England ever had, but ultimately as a total perspective and a total view, monarchies themselves ultimately make better decisions, and democracies make worse decisions, and that's all due to incentives.
If you want some evidence of this, look at the tax rate increase during under monarchy and wasn't in democracy.
Yeah,
look at the tax. It's just, you can by the numbers. You can see like it was you were giving up less of your money under monarchy than democracy by the numbers.
Yep. I mean, you can like, as much as I like to rag on France for a long time, they proved the fact that you can hold a king responsible, right? I mean, look at all the revolts and the things that they had over the years. I mean, it was clearly much more the case that they were able to hold them more accountable than we are today, because you don't have the legitimation problem that we have. And when you look at the state as it is now under democracy, you have a lot of politicians and everybody thinks that they have a say. Their vote gives them some kind of say. And then ultimately, when I go and vote, even if I don't win, it's not going to be forever and we can fix it the next go around. But ultimately, you don't have the time to fix anything. The problem's already come to pass, and it will continue to come to pass. Like, look at the debt ceiling, right? Like you have every time that a Republican gets elected, they always raise this debt ceiling. Under democracies, in peacetime and wartime, you get raised taxes, you get raised spending and things like that. Under monarchy, especially the older versions of monarchy, the king would have to go around with a campaign and trying to elicit funds from people because he knew that he couldn't do it without support. Right. Yeah. And it was hard for him.
That chapter on war under democracy versus monarchy blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
It was
amazing.
It was, before we get more into it, I got to do a little plug of my own stuff real quick.
Go right ahead.
You know what sucks, guys? Money. It's cumbersome. It's terrible. it's all controlled by the government. I want a great service where you can send me your money and I give it to people who walk out of their cars and walk out of hotel rooms, mainly women in Florida. I provide them with all the stuff they need for their job. And so if you want to give me your money, just DM me and you can come and buy this Democracy is Quinn's hoodie. Yes, this great, beautiful hoodie. Democracy is Quinn's, bro. So if you want to get rid of your money and help provide jobs and work for women of the night who work on the streets, my DMs are open. You can contact me. They will get the finest time of the 30 seconds of their life. So please DM me and I will provide them with great. Give me your money. Okay.
Cool. I want to read this comment that Art Gaha Randon posted. Okay, you need to make your name simpler, dude. I'm stupid. You can't make me read that kind of huge name. But anyway, he says a monarch cares about their kingdom. The democratic politicians are the managerial class who is managing the decline. That's absolutely a fact. They're literally just managing the descent of what's happening. That's all they're doing is they're trying to bring I guess their semblance of order to chaos, and ultimately that they're never going to be successful in doing so. That's not to say that, as a strategy, politics can't work. I mean, we've seen it work in many different ways, especially with gun rights and things like that. But ultimately, if we're looking at the large picture, it is a failure, right? It is an absolute failure because, like we've been talking about, ultimately they can't do anything and they're only there for self-enrichment. So they're going to make decisions that help them in the short term and hurt the country in the long term. We're passing on this debt to the future because who cares about them? Whereas the king,
in the long run, we're all dead.
Yeah, exactly. And the king, himself is looking at that. The king says, "Hey, these are my kids. This is my family. I'm not going to screw them and let them die when I'm gone." Right. So ultimately, they end up making better decisions. And people are like, Hoppe is a monarchist. Hoppe is a monarchist. Like, clearly, these people have never read the book. Like, if you believe that, you've never read the book because, like, he says it, I think, 3 different times that the natural order is superior in every way to both monarchy and democracy, because you end up not only have the benefits of monarchy, but that those benefits are distributed, right? Because then you have different competing orders that ultimately allow you to have different subsections, and you don't have this I guess, grand unified centralized order, right? It's all decentralized. And then ultimately that's much better than monarchy. But if we're going to rate things in an order, it's clearly the natural order, then monarchy, then democracy. You can expand that. You could say, okay, well, you have the natural order, then you have the feudal order, then you have the absolute king, then you have the constitutional king below him, then you have republicanism, and then you have democracy, and then finally you have some degenerated form of democratic despotism, right? So, I mean, you can expand that out, but ultimately it's those 3 things.
Now, one of the things about the monarchy that I found appealing was the idea that a prince is raised with the goal of leading. He's not only the king's responsibility. The prince is raised, hey,
from birth.
You're going to lead from birth. They don't know from birth. You're going to lead. We're going to train you. We're going to teach you. You're going to be provided with all the necessary resources. While in democracy, anyone can just run for office, and you can be stuck with someone. I could run for mayor, and they'd be stuck with my city decisions.
Oh yeah,
like
it's terrible. I mean, the what did Mencken say? What was his quote? I have a hard time remembering it sometimes, but it's basically like democracy is the I can't remember. It's a brilliant quote. I want to find that real quick.
He pops up in a lot. I'm reading Betrayal of the American Right by Mary Rothbard, and he pops up a lot in Hoppe's work and in Rothbard's work. He was great.
Oh yeah, Mencken is wonderful. I mean, I really view him, to me, as kind of the starting point of American libertarianism, and we can get into this topic because I've got some strong opinions on libertarianism and its order and how it came about and all of that. But he's he's a Tim, Mencken, and Knock were really, to me, the genesis of American libertarianism, and I think people would do well to understand why and how Rothbard talks about him all the time, and how much Rothbard was influenced by him. I found the quote. He says, "Democracy is the pathetic belief in the collective wisdom of individual ignorance." Right. So I love that.
That is a good quote.
It's wonderful. And ultimately, you know, I keep saying ultimately, sorry about that. You know, you have a, like you were saying, when you have just anybody that's able to come into power and gain those types of things simply by a popularity contest, and not necessarily credentials or the fact that they've worked and saved and done all of that, you have a, you end up with the lowest common denominator, the people that are ultimately out just to destroy you. They don't care anything about you. The king, you know, I'm not saying the king is always going to be benevolent or kind or you know, perfect or anything like that, but ultimately he's going to care a lot more about his subjects than any president. Any president, because he knows without those people, he knows without them that he has nothing. He has nothing, and the state will go on. The state will go on if you know, half of America is destroyed, right? Then nobody's going to say, oh well, you know, screw democracy and screw the president. There's still going to be people that follow him. Whereas if the king makes a bad decision and he destroys half of his kingdom, you're going to have a whole lot of pissed off people, you know what I mean, that are going to destroy him. And ultimately, I said it again, as you shrink the area in which, or decentralize the area in which people control, the more individual responsibility and the more responsibility the owner or the king or what have you can be held to, right? Because that person is ultimately more valuable. Whereas the more people you import into a centralized order, the less value you retain to the leaders at that time, right? This is why I believe in the smallest units we can get, because if we have larger and larger units, and this is why globalism is terrible, because you end up with you end up with the devaluation of human life.
I put out a poll the other day on Twitter, and I'm not so wise on this issue, but there's a quote from C.S. Lewis about it's better to have a dictator who is selfish and wants to basically only care about himself, that you could satiate his desires. While you have a king who actually cares about you, wants what's good for you, he's never going to rest.
Yeah.
And I'm torn, because on one hand, like, a king who cares about you and cares about his people and his survival might make better decisions than, say, a Robert Baratheon. You know, Robert Baratheon, you could easily just satiate by giving them more beer, you know, and more whores.
Yeah.
So which one do you think is better? A king who actually cares about his people and wants what's best for them, or a king who can satiate and get you to leave you alone faster?
So two things. I think it depends on the person, one. And two, I think it depends also on the size or area in which they control. I think that the larger, like if it's a global king, like let's say, for instance, that person who's going to never rest is going to ultimately end up making bad decisions that's going to affect everyone. Whereas if you have smaller decentralized kings and decentralized orders, one king that cares about his people may make great decisions that are decisions that he feel are necessary. And as a result, you have better decisions that are being made. Now, so I guess I would say if the king is stupid and over our like basically you can satiate him by giving him, you know, feasts and circuses and stuff like that at a larger scale, that's better. But at a smaller scale, I think a king that cares about his people is better.
I get it. I kind of agree with that. That's like, you're talking about like a mayor. You know, if a mayor is an absolute dictator of his small city, him caring about his people's, you know, habits and going to church and that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
That wouldn't be so bad, because he pop up and be like, hey man, I didn't see a church. What's going on? But a guy who who can't do that and has to mandate other people do it through like soldiers checking on people, that's not good at all. So
right, exactly.
Okay, great. We've already talked about borders a little bit, so let's get past that. Let's talk about secession, because Hopper has a whole chapter on secession.
Oh yeah, he talks a lot about secession. And actually, I don't disagree with Hoppe about secession at all. I think his insight is brilliant. The only thing I would say is that I actually think that we can achieve secession in different levels. Hoppe obviously wants to start at the lowest level possible and then expand out from there and do what you can to create this kind of decentralized dissolution, I guess. Or I would say we can, and that to me is probably the most efficient use of resources. However, I don't see any problem with supporting things like Texit or CalExit or things like that. I have no problem with that at all, because I think that if any of those things can work, like if Texit were to happen, you would ultimately see said it again. You would see an evident hypocrisy if Texans were to say, I need to separate, and now this county is its own country. Texas has become too far left. I'm going to create that kind of evident hypocrisy would be a problem for the quote unquote state of Texas, right? So I think that those things are fine, and I think that I don't even know that Hoppe would disagree with me, but he takes a different approach, and I think his approach ultimately is a much better way to approach the whole situation. And this is why I kind of oppose the Free State Project. I think that it's a bad idea in some ways to centralize all the libertarians, right? Yeah. Because then what have you done? You've created a target, right? And you're saying, look at all these crazy libertarians in this one place. You've made yourself the Ruby Ridge of states, right? Yeah. And they're going to come after you. So if you create, if you focus on these things like kind of like sleeper cells, like terrorist sleeper cells, right? And you do it all across the country in these little areas, then it's going to be much harder to suppress and put down than an entire state saying, we're doing our own thing, screw you. Yeah. So I get that from that perspective, and I agree with Hoppe completely that starting at the decentralized local level is definitely a better avenue, and local politics itself is much easier to get into and influence and things like that. So
speaking of local politics, go join the GOP Mises Caucus from Andrew at Popular Liberty and follow So Bishop.
Yeah, definitely. Those guys are great. Tho has done.
They're both coming on the podcast, and I'm so excited.
That's awesome. Man. Tho really for a long time there, I was pretty black-pilled about libertarians in the political space, because there were so many people that were repeating that tired old phrase that voting is aggression, and you can't vote. If you vote or participate in politics, you're evil, and blah blah blah. Yeah. And it was huge for a long time. That was very much the standard libertarian take, which is crazy to me, because that's never been a Mises thing. That's never been a Rothbard thing. Spooner.
I mean, Spooner, like the OG. I consider Spooner like the OG archetype of like pure principled libertarianism.
Yep.
I don't always agree with him, but he's always. You want the like Ace Arcus on Twitter. If you want the consistent principled answer, you would Ace. You might not get the solution, but you're gonna get the principled answer.
Yeah, and I think that Spooner. I think it was page 9 of No Treason. He says, if you're conscripted into a war, and you're forced to fight, you're not committing aggression to fight the fight that you've been put into, right? Because you're going to get killed one way or another. The state's playing you as a puppet. You might as well try and use the state against itself, right? So in self-defense, and I think it's totally reasonable to do that.
Yeah. I'm all for using the state against itself. One of my big points I've been trying to hop on lately is everyone to go to universities because they're indoctrination centers, and they should become professors and replace the professors that already exist. Because soon the government's gonna start paying for everyone's student loans at everyone's school. If you can use the state to fund its own destruction, because you're gonna hijack the universities that indoctrinate people. That's why I love Thomas De Lorenzo. He walked to the university. He taught a class that was counter. Like they would find out what the other teacher would teach it, and he would teach counter that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the strategy that the left took, the long march through the institutions. I mean,
Yes.
this is why I say that, we can learn a lot from a lot of these leftist strategists.
That's what I hate most about the left. They win.
Yeah, exactly. They're really, really good at it. I mean, they've won at every single turn. And if we don't learn from them and we don't learn how to fight back, we're going to keep losing and we're going to lose big. So yeah, let's infiltrate the institutions. Let's use politics as much as we can. Let's do the things that we need to do. Let's promote secession. Let's promote division. Let's promote
hate is great.
Yeah, that is my phrase, man. Like,
it's a great phrase.
Hate is great. If we can promote the fact that we're all different and we hate each other and we despise each other and we can't live together, the more and more people will begin to realize and believe that, and we'll end up separating along some lines, political, economic, racial, what have you. Eventually, people are going to break away, and that's great. I mean, if we can force that division, then we've won. So this is why the left continually wins, because their whole thing is centralization. So what do? They create all these disparate groups. And I've talked about this a little bit before, but basically they create all these disparate groups and then they house them under the umbrella of intersectionality, right? So what happens when you have different groups, economically speaking?
You broke out for a minute and I missed the last little bit of that. Can you repeat a little bit?
Yeah. So the left creates all of these distinct protected groups, right? And it keeps creating more and more of them. It started with the race thing, and then it morphed into the sexual thing, and it keeps growing, and then the disability thing, and the disease thing, and blah, 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 and they keep expanding and expanding these disparate groups. But what they've done, and very smartly so, is housed them all under the umbrella of intersectionality, right? I'm a trans, disabled, Black, what have you, right? So that this umbrella of intersectionality has given them the tool and the ability to say, here is our power structure, right? That power structure is large and diverse, and it has a very wide base. And I look at the quote unquote groups that you have there as kind of a zero sum, or at least the right has classically, right? But the left doesn't look at it like that. They can create new groups out of anything, oh, you've got a large nose, or you've got blonde hair, or you've got you're missing an arm, or what have you. And the more groups that they can create, the more power they can control, and the more that they can take away from our side. Because if they can give special privileges to these people, they can bring them into their side, right? Like if you're a straight white male, you're on the out, but that's it. That's it. That's the only group that's on the out. That's the evil group, right? So if they can take every single other person, you're Asian, you're Black, you're Hispanic, you're Latinx or Latinx or whatever you call that. I don't even know how to pronounce it.
The best one is China X. Chinks.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a 4chan troll, but they got some people saying it on Twitter, and it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. They're going around saying, we have to protect the China X population.
But yeah, I mean, this is what the left does, and I think that we're going the opposite direction, so we don't need that kind of centralization. We need to break those groups apart, and there are different strategies and things how we can approach that, but we can also use that against them, right? We can say, look at all these disparate groups. Wouldn't it be great if they were all separate so they don't have to conflict anymore, right? Like that. These are the types of things. This is why we can learn from the left, and we can look at the left as brilliant strategists in the way that they do things, because ultimately they are, and they keep winning. And this is why I kind of look at a lot of Republicans, and obviously many libertarians do as well, that they're fighting a losing battle because they're not going to the other end. The left has won the pull of the Overton window, right? The Overton window is so far left now that moderates are communists. Well,
you want an example of this, like the left side of the right side of losing and trying to like become better and adopt the left. Pedro Gonzalez, one of those new conservative guys, has a piece, an article, and arguments for why a conservative should support a $15 minimum wage.
Oh God.
Yeah, I know, and he's like one of the main guys on the right now. And it's
Pedro is a he's a smart guy in regards to everything but economics. And I think that we can easily come at him from the right on economics. And I think that that's what we need to do, is to say, hey, okay, that's great. It's so wonderful that you have leftist opinions and that you're advocating for something that's going to end up hurting a lot more people, and people are going to lose jobs, and they're going to lose their position. And why do you hate the working class, and blah, 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 you know?
Yeah. Let's talk about conservatives for a bit. When it comes to older conservatives, what's one of the ones that are actually worth reading? Because obviously it's not Buck. Obviously it's not Buckley. But what about like people like Cook? Was a Cook worth reading? What about Buchanan? Like, how did you determine who are the good right wingers you can learn from and read?
So Paul Gottfried, go read Paul Gottfried. Paul Gottfried is great. Buchanan, yeah, I think he has some really great takes. I think that I think it was Death of the West. Is that him, or was that someone else? I can't remember.
That was
Burnham. Yeah.
Was he Suicide of the West or Death of the West?
I don't remember. Whatever book he wrote about the West. That was a great book. I have it somewhere. I just haven't read it in a long time. You know, you can read people like that. You can read, like I said, Paul Gottfried, and Hoppe recently introduced me to somebody that I think is really great, which is Holler. If you haven't heard of him, there was a retweet that I did of a guy that did a biography background on him. Hoppe is doing a PFS speech, or already did a PFS speech this year about him, Carl Holler. And I think that if you read, you know, Gottfried and Holler, and if you go back further into the classical tradition of the right, you're going to find a lot more. Hell, I don't even see anything like, obviously there's objectionable people or objectionable presidents, but if you look at like Taft, right? Like Taft to me is a much better example of what a right winger should have been back in the day than, Lincoln, you know what I mean? And Lincoln's further back, right? Like I think that there is Death of the West is Buchanan, Suicide of the West is Burnham. Okay, there we go. Cool. Thanks for that, God of Words.
Those books I should read.
Yes, both of those books are great. I think that investigating and reading some people that are on what people would think as off limits is good as well. Charles Murray, The Bell Curve. I think people should read that book. I think it's a good book, and people should read it. People will yell at me for this, and I don't really care. I think Jared Taylor is a very smart dude. I think that people, yeah. I mean,
he has my favorite thing ever said in all of human history. When someone called him a racist hillbilly, he said, "I live in Iowa. There are no hills to billion." Like that is just the greatest thing ever said in all of human history. Like everyone's gonna stop talking now. It's over.
I didn't know that. That's hilarious. And I have a lot of respect for those guys. I may not agree with everything they have to say, but I have a lot of respect for them because they hold the line. And I think that, there's a lot to be said about a man that will hold to his principles and hold to what he believes, no matter what threats he gets. And Taylor is, he's dealt with a lot of crap. I mean, people come into his home and people, assaulting him in public, and, it's crazy. But yeah, I do think that there's a lot of historical people, especially that we can learn from on the right. And, there's people that, aren't, that wouldn't necessarily be considered right that we can learn from too. And I think that you have like, what's his name? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. There was another author that I wanted to talk about, but I've lost it. That's what happens. I have a goldfish memory.
It's all good. What about new guys, new conservatives that are on the scene? Like, what about Nick Fuentes, for example? Because he's a weird one that I can't nail down on anything.
Yeah. So it's the way that I feel is that no matter how much someone professes that they're on the right, if they don't have a good understanding of what being right wing is, they will eventually become left wing. And I think that his opinions are drifting more in that direction than they were previously. And I think that he's been a great I guess, proselytizer of being right wing and pushing back against the left. I think that the mass media has had a hard time destroying him, and that's wonderful. Do I think that he's a well-read person that you should take your opinions from? No, I don't. But
it's fun. But
he's fun. Yeah, and that's fine as long as people realize that, right? Like, you can enjoy personalities, and you can also read the theory and understand it, and those two things rarely coincide, right? I think that more often than not, that a lot of newer conservatives are people that are trained by the last generation that was a joke. And you're going to find, like, look at Charlie Kirk. I mean, like, it's terrible.
No, I tolerate Charlie Kirk because he argued with Michael Noe, saying if you're gonna believe in a small state, you have to be against the death penalty, and he preferred English common law to American law.
Yeah,
so I at least give him a little bit, but Michael Noe is the fucking worst.
Yeah.
Matt Walsh is a weird one.
Matt Walsh is a weird one. He is definitely a weird one.
He's not intellectual and well read, but he pro succession, doesn't want to live with these people, speaks like an everyday Joe.
Yeah.
But he also is like really against, he wants to ban porn and ban adultery, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, he is a theocratic fascist in some sense.
And I think that I think that allying with people like Matt Walsh is fine. I think that ultimately they're going to come our direction, or they're going to leave and they're going to separate. And I'm fine with that, right? The people that I have no use for are the conservatives who don't believe in separation as even an ultimate goal, right? Or even an option. Like, those people are not our friends. Like, I don't care what their positions are. If they do not believe in separation, they are not our friends. They're leftists.
Yeah. That was one of the big perceiving points where I was like going into the libertarian route. I was like, I can be somewhat libertarian. I'm still going to read like these right-wing guys and stuff. I've kind of gone back to that full circle, but I know what guys are actually right-wing now. And it was Ben Shapiro's How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps. Basically, the entire book is how like anti-success and nonsense. Like, it's all like, we can't let America separate. They want to destroy us, and it's like, yes, destroy it. Cast it into the fire. Cast it into the fire and burn. I have a signed copy of that book.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, I got a signed. My signed copy of the collection is weird. I have a signed copy from Yaron Brook, signed copy from Ben Shapiro, Sean Hannity, and Murray Rothbard.
Oh man, that is a variety.
I stole the Hannity one from it was a there's book things like leave a book, take a book. I just took it. I didn't leave a book. The rights, all the good conversations are happening on the right, and that's what I want to talk about was Ayn Rand. I'm a huge fan of Ayn Rand and objectivism and the whole virtuous selflessness kind of thing. I can't place her well. She seems more right wing than left wing.
Yeah,
but she's also has these weird and idiosyncrasies. I'm like, you don't sound like a conservative or a libertarian or anyone on the right at all.
Yeah, no, I don't consider Ayn Rand a libertarian in the Hoppe and a Rothbardian sense. I think that I don't even know if I would like. She created her own thing, right? She believed in objectivism, right? And if there's one thing that I hate her for, it's that introducing the concept or the dichotomy of individualism and collectivism. I don't like that dichotomy. I think that it's a false dichotomy, and that I think libertarians lean on that a little too much, and they say, anything that if you don't believe in the individual in all cases for everything, then you're a collectivist and you're evil and blah blah blah. Like, people can't believe in their families and their communities and things like that. I hate that. That being said, I think that she brings a lot to the table in the realm of helping people break free of this leftist notion that self-improvement and the producers in our world are evil. I hate that notion. Given there are, exactly, and I'm fine with that. I like the idea of a natural elite. However, I think that the elite, quote unquote, ruling elite today, as Rothbard would call them, is kind of They're not the natural elite. Obviously,
No.
they're a false elite, and this is, of course, created through egalitarianism and artificial hierarchies and things like that. You get this false ruling elite, and as a result, you can't idealize these people. And I don't think that the idea of Atlas with the world on his back is extremely relevant today. I think that those people are very much not the Atlas we need, if that makes sense.
Hold up. God of Lords just commented. A little too much. Most libertarians can't see anything but more collectivism and more individualism. Don't forget Roads. They see there's the only three things they can see.
What did he say? A little too much. Most libertarians can't see anything else, but oh yeah, for sure. I hate that. I think it's a crutch. It's a crutch. Like if I can apply everything through this dichotomic filter of individual and collective, then I can make decisions on everything. But that's not what libertarianism is. Libertarianism is about property rights, and I think that. And I will eventually one day, I've talked about this in a lot of podcasts, release a book about the nature of order and how libertarianism, in my mind, is the furthest thing right that you can get, and how ultimately any view that would conflict with that is ultimately a form of leftism. But we kind of covered that already.
Yeah. One thing that helped to talk about. Now I'm a little bit in this book, but many other books. Argumentation ethics, and I am a fan of argumentation ethics. I think it's fun. I think it's great. I think it bridges the is-ought gap, which I always found stupid as hell. Is-ought gap is so stupid to me. It's like you can't derive more statements from is statement. It's like, yeah, I think you can. It's like, I had a joke about my friend is like, you could stay in is fact, like the road's gonna end on the road's gonna run into a cliff in a couple of miles, and the moral argument is you should not run into a cliff. Just so farm is bad.
Yeah.
And these are stupid.
Yeah,
but I will say I have a little issue with it. I don't think it's smart. I don't think it's useful. I think you're more like, if you really want to talk to the right about paleo stuff, I don't think it serves the purpose, because somebody on the right is much more natural rights, and they believe in natural law. And I think you make Murray Rothbard's arguments better with natural law because they believe in that, instead of having to introduce a new argument because they don't really care about. Like, I think it's a great argument for someone who's more of the left. I just don't see it being useful for anyone on the right when you have Murray Rothbard's natural law arguments.
I understand that perspective. What I would say is I think that argumentation ethics flows perfectly with the understanding that God created us. I think that you can synthesize those arguments very easily by saying, God created us, and as a result, we own ourselves because He endowed us with the ownership in our own bodies, right? And as a result, how do you prove that? Well, I can prove that through argumentation ethics and the law of non-contradiction, and as a result, I've proven that I own myself, and therefore, where do I get that? I get that from God. So I think that you can synthesize those arguments pretty well. Not that I disagree that the natural rights arguments don't provide you with a good place to, I guess, coincide with a lot of more classic conservatism. I think that it can definitely be a good bridge or a good gap for that. And Murray was great with that. I mean, like if you look at what was that? The Ethics of Liberty. I mean, the ethics.
That's the one I got signed. I got an old
nice
Ethics of Liberty sign. I did not know it was signed when I bought it. I bought it at a used bookstore, and I opened it up. I'm like, gotta get this.
That's mine. Yeah.
This is mine.
That's awesome. But yeah, like the Ethics of Liberty was originally conceived, to my memory, as that original stepping off point of the synthesis of the right and libertarian thought, and that Murray Rothbard was evolving that tradition of being right wing, and it morphed from that into being its own kind of philosophy and things like that because of the neocons. I think that. Libertarianism, I think the libertarianism would have benefited a lot more going down that path. I think we would have gotten to the same point, but I think that we would have gotten there without all the confusion of the leftism that early Murray Rothbard ended up introducing and then later realizing that he had made a mistake. I think that we would have definitely gotten to where we are a lot faster, and we would have ultimately had a lot better time of approaching these right-wing topics, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's talk about the elites for a little bit, because I'm an elitist. I like elites.
Everybody should.
Everyone should. If you don't like elites, because you don't think you can. If you don't like elites, it's because you don't think you can be one. That's my view.
Yeah.
One of the big things I really learned when I started going down the libertarian route was the whole elites justify the state to a lot of people. Even if they don't directly listen to them, the elites are the ones that the arguments get boiled down. Social contract, divine right of kings. These are people won't know these arguments, but they'll state them like the facts. They've been boiled down from the elites. And it's in the elite. Why do you think it's in the elites' interest? Because this is something I can never really figure out. Is why are the elites so interested, you think, in having the state around?
Well, because the false elites that we have today are incentivized to do so. There is very much the merger of the elites that are currently existing and the state, whereas pre-state or as we were talking about before in the feudal system, those elites were not necessarily a merger of those things. And I think that you're going to find more often than not that the state ends up creating its own false elites. So if you look at the the very easiest thing to point out to confirm this is, like, if you look at the former CEOs of large companies, right? Where do they go when they're done being CEOs? They go into the regulatory sphere for those same areas of business, right? And then where do the former regulatory heads go when they're out of government? They go into the private sphere to head those companies as CEOs. And this is where you get a lot of false decisions that are made, right? Like the CEO of Boeing goes and becomes the head of the FAA, and all of a sudden he's making laws about the fact that you can't do plane sharing, like ride sharing for Uber anymore, right? Of course, because what does that do? It enriches him and it enriches all of his buddies. And then when he gets out of that, maybe he'll go to work for Lockheed or something like that, right? So this is why ultimately a lot of the modern ruling elite love the state, because it helps enrich them, it helps enrich their friends, and it helps them maintain control, right? Whereas if the state didn't exist, they wouldn't be able to do that, and they'd have to compete, and there would be a different era of elites that existed, right? Because you wouldn't have these airline industries or the banking industry or things like that get bailed out all the time. They would fail, and then ultimately you'd have better people that show up and take control, and those people would become the natural elites.
What are some benefits of monarchy that we could implement? Like, for example, term limits. I'm a big believer we should get rid of term limits, because the best way to control a politician is to kick him out of office.
So I would actually take the opposite on that. I think we should make politician terms permanent. I think we should remove all ability for them to be removed from their position in totality, because then they're going to have to make decisions that will make them responsible, and they're going to have a lot harder time.
I stayed already very right wing position. You take it a step further.
So I think that I had that same position. I was like, yeah, kick these people out. It's ridiculous for Pelosi to be in there for years, but actually, she would end up being a lot more, I guess, responsible to the people that she supposedly represents, because she's going to get a lot more death threats. And she's going to get a lot more people that want her removed. And she's going to have to think long term, because she can't leave. She's a permanent politician, right? So she's going to end up having to make decisions. She's not going to be able to make her $1 million on a book deal or whatever and then go off to a private island where nobody can get to her. She's going to have to go back to LA and live there. You know what I mean? Like that's what I think. I think
so the goal really should be to find a way to return accountability to politics.
Kind of. As a strategy, maybe. I would prefer. I would prefer us just to leave. At the end
I
of the
agree.
day, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that our energy is best focused on doing local politics, creating PACs, political action committees, and things like that. Political action funds. And trying to make people more divisive. I think that libertarians should be the guys out there that are like, we're not the guys in the middle of the groups selling bats. We're the guys behind each of the groups that are telling the other group they hate you because you're white, or they hate you because you're black, or they hate you because you're trans, or whatever. We should be those people. We should be the ones that are stoking fires. And you'll find a lot in history that anarchists very much do that, and we should re-embrace that.
I agree. One thing I like to do, because on Facebook, only people on Facebook are my family that I just normally troll. And all my family, they'll go off about like, oh, minimum wage is so bad. And I'm like, this is what you wanted. You wanted democracy. You got minimum wage laws. You know, this is this. Every time someone complains about any government decision, I bring up your fault. You wanted democracy.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if you're in favor of democracy, you're going to be ultimately the one that pays the price for it. You're sowing the seeds of your own destruction. One of the guys in the chat said, "What do you think of BAP?" And I think Brown's age guy is pretty smart. I think that he has some opinions that may not necessarily be obvious, and he has, I don't want to say ulterior motives, but there's definitely subtext to a lot of the things that he says. So worth reading. Also, shout out to James Robinson in the chat. He's a guy I've known for a very, very long time. He's a great guy.
Very nice. What was your biggest takeaway from Democracy the God That Failed?
Definitely that that secession is definitely needed and necessary, and we need to approach that as a strategy. That democracy, it made me, reading Democracy the God That Failed pushed me into reading other Hoppe works. So learning things about, especially Short History of Man. I've been on a kick about talking about Short History of Man. If you haven't read that,
I just did a podcast on it 2 days ago with Matt Erickson.
It's a wonderful book.
Really good.
People need to go and read that book. It'll make you understand. Not only supports Hoppe's argument about secession, it shows why it's eminently necessary and why it's part of humanity. That the separation of people is what creates who we are. It brought us out of the Malthusian trap, and it saved us. It saved us from destruction. I think that that to me is one of the best things that Democracy the God That Failed gave me was a love for Hoppe's work and reading more of it. But did
you read this one first, or what was your first Hoppe book?
Democracy the God That Failed was my first Hoppe book.
This is my fourth one, I think. Yeah, fourth one. I started with A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism.
That's a great book. That's Taylor Shiring. He works for the site with me. That's his. I think that's his favorite Hoppe book. So it's a great book. I love it too. I like the economics and ethics of private property too. I think that will give you gives you a love and appreciation for private property that even if you say you're a libertarian and you love private property, that book will give you a love and appreciation for private property that you never knew you had. I actually haven't read Hoppe's latest book, which is Economy, Society, and History. Oh, I've got to read it. I just haven't had time. Have you read that one yet?
I have. It's in my shopping list.
It's
I have books right now.
I know. I like literally have a backlog, and people are like, "You got to read this," and I'm like, "All right, I'll add it to my shopping list. I'll get to it in 3 years."
Yeah, well, this is why I don't want to, but I'm probably gonna take a break from podcasting for all of like November just to read more books. So I'm almost caught up on the books I've read. And it's like, if I want to do all these next months of like, I want to do a whole month of Rothbard books and go through like a lot of his work, I actually need to finish reading these books, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And more power to you, because there's a lot of libertarians out there who will read, like they'll read one book, they'll read
Anatomy of the State.
Anatomy of the State, and they'll be like, all right, I'm a libertarian. I'm done reading. I don't need to read anymore. I'll get the rest of my information from Facebook. And it's so tiring. It's so tiring to encounter those people because they don't get it. They think they do, and they just don't.
Yeah. What order do people read the Hans Hermann Hoppe books in?
So I think it depends on where you're coming from. I think if you're a conservative, you should read Getting Libertarianism Right. Read that book first. It's a great intro. It will make you understand. The never-ending reading list. Yeah, 100%. It'll bring you over to our side. 100%. I really believe that. Then read Democracy: The God That Failed. Then Short History of Man. Then either it's a toss-up between Economics and Ethics of Private Property or A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism. And when I read Economy, Society, and History, that may go in there somewhere. If you're more in the middle, I would probably recommend starting off with A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism. I think that's a good way to get into this from that perspective, and then go through Economics, the Economics and Ethics of Private Property, then Democracy: The God That Failed, and then going on to Short History of Man and Getting Libertarianism Right. I think that's a better order if you're more in the middle. If you're on the left, there's no hope. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no hope. No. I don't. If you want to left, I don't want you reading Hoppe. That's my view. That's like books are better than podcasts because there's a barrier of entry because not a lot of people are going to read books.
Yep. Very, very true.
Okay, well, we're running out of time. I always ask guests this question before we kind of hop off the podcast because it's a Catholic podcast. What's your history with religion? Are you atheist, religious? What you wanted to say?
So like I was raised Catholic. My dad was Catholic. My mom is Protestant. I was agnostic for a very long time. I'm now reading a book about Orthodoxy, and a good friend who is Orthodox gave me an Orthodox study Bible. So I'm going through that. I've kind of rediscovered religion from that perspective. I think that it's, especially with more right-wing views, it has it reignited my interest in that sphere. My wife is Orthodox too, so I think that it'll be interesting to see where I come out.
That's my notes. There's a lot of like libertarians or right-wing people who are awesome are really going on the Eastern Orthodoxy route.
Yeah,
like this is I can't figure out the connection because I was part of my hopes is Catholic, but they all go to more Platonist style, which is I don't know. I can't figure out why that is. But
I don't know the connection either, but I've noticed that too.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. Maybe because Lord of Spirits podcast is so good. That might be it. Yeah. Well, Jared, has been a lot of fun. We covered a lot of topics. I just don't remember what I do. I have a book that started a conversation and it kind of goes everywhere. Where can people find you at? Where can they find more Hoppe stuff?
So if you want to read more Hoppe and find out more about Hoppe, go to hanshoppe.com. It's Hoppe's website. You can find everything there. Go to PFS, go to Property and Freedom Society website. Find them on YouTube. Read all of that. His
lectures are great.
His lectures are amazing. Go and listen to them. I mean, if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to PFS lectures, go and listen to them. After you're done with that, come visit our website, hoppian.org. You can follow us on Twitter at the Hoppian. We're on all the social media sites. We're on Instagram and Facebook and, what have you and whatever. And then after you've done all that, then maybe you can follow me. My name's on the screen at In Democracy. And hopefully I haven't blocked you because I block a lot of people. So
you blocked my friend Jacob and he's weeing about it a little bit. He's a good dude, but he is autistic as shit. There's no other way to put it. I love him. I love the guy. He's a great friend, but he gets a little autistic by the Mises Caucus.
Yeah. I block a lot of people. I've got 80,000 people blocked. So it's
I thought I had a high number to 81.
like I subscribed to a block list back in the day, and that gave me quite a few. But now I just like after I got nixed the first time, it's like if I see anybody that is even remotely subtweeting me, is remotely leftist, has opinions that I know that I'm going to get into an autistic argument with, I'm just like it's not worth my time. I'm better off proselytizing. I'm here to spread a message, right? That's what I'm here to do. I don't care about these libertarian arguments and crap like that. Like I want to bring more people to Hoppe. So that's what I'm about, and that's what I'm trying to do. So if you guys want to find me, you can find me at End Democracy.
One more question, because we brought it up. Favorite Hoppe lecture? Because to me, it's probably what Marcus got right. Like that's the one I really enjoyed.
That's a great lecture. People can learn a lot from that lecture. My favorite would probably be Right Libertarianism as Realistic Libertarianism. If you haven't read that,
I haven't heard that one yet.
All right, yeah. If you haven't listened to that or watched that video, go check it out. It's great.
Well, everybody, this has been another episode of the Catholic Libertarian Podcast. Go read more Hoppe and go donate money to the Mises Institute.
Absolutely.